who's joined this call. I'm delighted to welcome you to our first session on global voices in sustainable travel and meetings. Um, this is our first episode, and our objective of this session really is to focus on sustainable travel and meetings as a global priority. We've got this global series is intended to provide a platform to subject matter experts, enterprise buyers, and industry partners to articulate how this priority can be delivered and is being delivered globally. Many markets across the world are not as evolved as Western Europe and North America, and these markets present unique challenges given their complex, heterogeneous structures. And in the course of this series, as we build this series going forward, we will look at identifying approaches to build deeper engagements around sustainability in these segments of the global ecosystem. The series is brought to you by my firm, ProConsul Consulting. We are a specialist consulting firm based in India. We focus on business travel consulting, which is life cycle optimization, globalization and program excellence, sustainable business travel, market representations, and industry networking events such as this one, and some others that we're going to launch during the course of the year. My name, for those of you who don't know me, is Gaurav Sundaram. I'm the president of ProConsul Consulting. I've been involved with the industry, the travel industry, for a little over 30 years, and recently completed a certification program in sustainable business travel with the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, the organization that Ram represents. And I'm also now a part of their business travel working group, which is trying to create the criteria and standards for the overall business travel industry worldwide. With this, I'd like to introduce you to Ram. Ram is the Vice Chair and Program Director of the Global Program Director for South Asia for the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, which is more commonly referred to as GSTC. Ram is a man of many, many talents, and he is truly a global leader in the sustainability domain. He's an author, a speaker, a trainer, a consultant, an entrepreneur, and an expert in applied sustainability. I hope I covered everything, Ram, and I didn't leave out too much which was relevant. He's also had a very long tenure in the past with the advertising and marketing industry, and was associated with the organizations like Saatchi and Saatchi, Ogilvy and Mather and Publicis. So welcome, Ram, to our session today. I am so delighted to have you as our first speaker, and if you have any initial thoughts to get started.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for the warm welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a nice initiative that you started, on sustainability in travel. There's very little discussed about it in the mainstream, and we need more and more organizations like yours to start these discussions to ensure that everybody gets on the same page when it comes to how do we manage our travel more sustainably. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Ram. So in the interest of time, I think I'll try to get started with the questions that we shortlisted for Ram's comment during this session. I'm hoping that these will give you a fairly good sense of what GSTC is doing and how Ram, as someone leading this organization, is viewing sustainability in different parts of our industry and our globe. So first of all, Ram, for the benefit of many of our audience members, could you give us an introduction into what GSTC does and what are its primary objectives and role in the sustainability domain to kick us off?
Sure. So the Global Sustainable Tourism Council was formed in 2007, 2008 to develop standards for sustainable tourism standards for the travel and tourism industry. It was felt at that time by the United Nations system that tourism, there was a realization that tourism tends to consume resources that are disproportionate to the value it adds back to the economy. There is this common norm about tourism is employment provider, tourism adds to GDP, which is all very true. But the way the tourism is being practiced as of now, not just in India, globally, there is what I call a hole in the bucket. There
Mm.
are drainages of resources, and this drainage is disproportionate to the value that tourism is adding back. So the United Nations system, way back in the early 2000s, realized this and decided that we need some standards for the tourism industry to follow. Similar standards had been developed for many sectors, like the marine sector, the forestry sector. So tourism was targeted. So the United Nations Foundation, the United Nations Environmental Program, United Nations World Tourism Organization, and a few private sector people came together and formed the GSTC with the express purpose of developing sustainable tourism standards for the world.
Mhm.
So we wanted a set of standards that's applicable universally, that follows the processes of any UN body, and which is robust enough to be able to roll into any part of the world. So we are a standard setting body. We own the standards that we've set for the tourism industry.
Got it. Understood. So it seems a very wide remit, of course, given the scope of the activity that you're involved. So um, are there any specific initiatives by which you lead the sustainability discussion globally? How does that get managed? What are the key initiatives that you're working on in that area as GSTC?
So our main focus, as is obvious, is maintenance of the standards. You see, once a global standard is developed by any entity, be it the Marine Stewardship Council or the Forestry Stewardship Council or like the GSTC, the moment standards are developed, it becomes a live document. It's not a document that can be frozen in time. And because all global standard setting bodies of repute are part of what is known as the ISEAL Alliance. And the ISEAL Alliance is an alliance of tourism bodies globally that supervises, so to speak, the standard setting bodies to ensure that the standards that they set are indeed global, and the processes, more importantly, of forming these standards are global. So a lot of our time we spend maintaining our standards. So we've developed till now our two standards, one for the industry. By industry, we mean hotels, resorts, and tour operators, and another set of standards for destinations. These standards need to be updated on a regular basis, 4 to 5 to 6 years, depending on how the market conditions change. So one huge task that we do is sort of just maintaining the standards. The second piece of work that we are actively engaged on is training and development. It's one thing to develop standards, but it's something else to ensure that people understand standards. And tourism is an industry where there is a lot of misunderstanding, if I may put it that way. Whenever we talk about sustainability, people think it is environmental sustainability, green, eco. Those are the words that come into everybody's minds. So while in truth, sustainability encompasses all aspects of sustainability, which is sustainability management, socioeconomic sustainability, cultural sustainability, and environmental sustainability. So we spend a lot of our time doing training programs, raising awareness for the industry and for governments. And in fact, especially post-COVID, many governments have sort of woken up to the necessity and the importance of sustainable tourism. So we spend a lot of our time doing that. And the third aspect is, of course, helping governments implement standards. There are a lot of governments around the world, scores of them, who are developing standards which are based on the GSTC standards, and then they come to us for recognition, and there's an entire process there.
I think
so helping, guiding.
With the India government accepting the GSTC standards for tourism in India, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that happened in 2010.
Okay.
Pretty early in the life, because I've been part of GSTC from 2007, 2008, when it was being formed, in Washington, DC. And in 2010, we brought GSTC to India. And in fact, I think we were the first country in the world, to look at GSTC as a standard. And those days, the tourism secretary was Sujit Banerjee, and he was quite wise enough to say that a nation as large as ours, we also need to follow global standards. And he was visionary enough to bring it. So we brought it to India in 2010. And at that time, we formed what is known as the Indian Sustainable Tourism Standards, which is based on the GSTC. And I think now it's called the STCI, the Sustainable Tourism Criteria for India. Those standards were developed by an entire panel, and I was part of that. And so those standards are available. Well, those standards are not up to date as yet. They still need to be updated to because GSTC itself has gone through, 3-4 evolutions since then for all our standards, but the STCI hasn't kept up with it. But that's something which the government of India, has to sort of attempt at some point in time. So we were, shall I say, I can't say early adopters, but we were early realizers of this. Let's put it that way.
We started at least. Okay. So given the scope of the activity and the immense challenges also that our industry poses, as you mentioned, what are some of GSTC's biggest wins in the recent past that you guys may particularly feel proud about?
Well, wins are happening every day. And I say this only because during COVID and the post-COVID era has seen growth in acceptance of sustainable tourism standards like we never imagined.
Mm-hmm.
We were, and we still are, struggling to hire enough people to help with the various sort of functions that we carry out. Earlier, we used to have a very small secretariat with just 2-3 people, and now that's grown to about 8 or 10 people, and we're still growing.
Mm-hmm.
Post-COVID, there has been a sudden realization that business as usual is not going to work. Governments who are signatories to a lot of the global UN agreements, like the climate change agreements, are beginning to realize that all the NDCs that they declared, the nationally determined contributions that they declared, post the Paris conference, now they are being held accountable for it. Earlier, it was non-binding. Now they're all binding agreements. So governments around the world are also beginning to realize that, okay, now we need to deliver. It is not just making a commitment saying, I will reduce my greenhouse gas emissions by X percentage and increase my carbon sinks by X percentage. Now you have to prove it. You have to show that you're actually doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is this compulsion that is driving a lot of governments and entities around the world to embrace sustainability in the tourism sector.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of governments have come to us, and I think one of the biggest recently has been Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's going through its unfortunate, earthquake situation now. Turkey as a nation has made its commitment towards sustainable tourism, and they've actually written it into law, where in the next 10 years, it's 22,000 plus hotels and tour operators within the country. You have to become, all of them have to be certified by the GSTC standards. And if they are not, their licenses, are threatened.
Got it.
It's the first country in the world that has sort of taken it so seriously. So that is a big one for us. And then, of course, there are also a lot of other countries in the Asia-Pacific region, like Singapore, Japan. All of them are also mulling this very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
There are other governments, like the government of Mauritius, that has taken it to the next level altogether,
Mm-hmm.
where they've got their own national accreditation body to look at our standards, to get prepared to accredit others within the country.
Mm-hmm.
So there are various levels of it that's happening all over the world. So it's difficult for me to pick one of them and say, wow, this is a big win. Because for us, even if it's a small island nation that sort of commits to this, it's a big win. So it's not the numbers or the quantum that's as important as, with the momentum that we're facing. So yeah, it's going well.
Great to know that. So with that introduction of GSTC and what it's doing, I hope it sets context for all our audience members on how GSTC is really making this change across our industry. I'd like to come to the travel and meetings ecosystem, and particularly our three stakeholders in this domain, which is essentially the consumers of travel, whether they be enterprise customers or retail consumers, the suppliers or the industry partners, and obviously the regulators, as you mentioned, these government bodies and organizations like GSTC. When we look at these three stakeholders, how real is sustainability as a goal for them? Uh, uh, who really is driving this agenda to go towards sustainability? Does any one of these stakeholders have a greater stake in the process, or what is your view on it?
Well, I wouldn't say any one of the stakeholders is more important than the other stakeholder, because all of them are, they play distinct roles, and each of these roles that they fulfill are important.
Mhm.
Now, having said that, sustainability as something that people need to absorb, usually in the industry, people turn around and say, but why should I?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, is it going to result in anything, any significant difference in my bottom line?
Mhm.
Uh, and those are relevant questions. You don't do anything just because you love the planet and you want to save the planet and the whales. Expecting people to act out of passion is unrealistic, which is fair enough.
Mhm.
So today, the big thing for stakeholders to look at is, how does this result in business eventually?
Mhm.
So when it comes to how does this result in business, many people are beginning to realize that there is a demand from the market for sustainable hotels, tour operators, and resorts. And that demand has been accentuated. Bookings.com did a piece of research recently where they've seen the propensity to move towards sustainable travel is only increased. And the biggest challenge people are having is finding enough options.
Mhm.
So we have the global demand creators like TUI, for example, which is the world's largest travel company, American Express Global Travel, Bookings.com, Google, and all the big names. All of them have subscribed to the sustainable tourism standards that have been prescribed by GSTC, and they're building it into their own businesses in various forms. So it'll reach a stage where you will have Bookings.com highlighting hotels, resorts, and tour operators who are following sustainable tourism standards, highlight them more than they will highlight the rest of it, which will result in business.
Mhm.
So I believe that market demand and market factors are the ones that will drive this eventually.
Mhm.
Of course, we look for, trendsetters, like bookings.com, like Timex Global Travel, like Google, and all of them. They're all trendsetters who are
Mhm.
leading the discussion, in the market. And that in itself is creating the kind of change that people are looking for.
Are people willing to pay that premium for a sustainable tourism experience? Because sustainable tourism does come at a little premium. Is that something that you feel people are willing to put that money on the table, or are they just voicing this to sound good and feel good about themselves?
First of all, let me, with humility, make a correction. Gaurav, sustainable tourism doesn't cost more money.
Okay, I'm sorry.
People think it is premium.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's a common misconception in the market that if you're going towards sustainable tourism, oh my God, it's going to cost more.
Mm.
That is a complete mistaken, issue.
Mm.
In fact, I tell CEOs of companies, hotels, if you have not baked in sustainability into your long-term strategic plan, then you have lost out and on an aspect of your strategic plan that will result in better business. And I
Mm.
tell CFOs of companies,
Mm.
if you haven't built in sustainability into your balance sheet, you have failed in your fiduciary duty.
Mm.
Let
Correct.
me repeat that. I tell CFOs, if you haven't built in sustainability into your balance sheet, you have failed in your fiduciary duty. What I mean is, today sustainability makes business sense.
Mm.
The obvious business sense factors are sustainability drives down your cost of operations. Your OPEX goes down the moment you start implementing sustainability practices, processes into your business. And in the long term, what I mean by telling CEOs you have to build it into your strategic plan is sustainability is also risk mitigation. We have the habit of taking key man risk
Yes,
insurance,
correct.
right?
Yes.
If that is what we do, then we need to build in sustainability, because in the long term, there are massive risks if you're not sustainable. Let me identify one of those risks for you. Companies, hotels that use diesel generators, for their operation. As of now, the hotel industry is under the radar screen, and the governments are not really too bothered about it because they are focusing on the steel industries, the cement industries, electricity generation, at a grid level. But the moment they've covered all those sectors, they will start going down and looking at all the other smaller consumers. So, for example, at one time they looked at the towers, these cell phone towers, because they're huge guzzlers of energy again. And then cell phone tower companies have been asked to migrate towards renewable energy because that is massive. A day will come when they will start looking at hotels and tour operators, especially hotels, and telling them, if you're going to use a diesel generator, you got to pay a carbon tax. Now, a lot of people sort of listen to it and say, is it really going to happen? And I remind them, for a country like India that depends 60-70% on coal for our energy generation, this government had the courage to impose a coal tax, a carbon tax on coal imports. For every ton of coal that is imported, there is a carbon tax for a country that's dependent on coal. So if they have the appetite for that, coming and taxing, a hotel, a luxury hotel for the diesel generator it uses is not going to be, they're not going to have to think too much about it.
Correct.
So there is a risk. And one day when that legislation falls into place, companies will be caught by surprise. So I tell them this is a risk mitigation. Rise above it and prepare to go beyond compliance in your carbon emissions, because that is what everybody is looking at. And sustainable tourism is what helps you sort of, get to that stage.
I think your clarifications are absolutely spot on, because the perception as you look at the industry is a lot of companies tend to market sustainable tourism or sustainable practices, that kind of premium experience. And, I guess that relates in part to marketing, it relates to branding and everything else. And I think what you said is very pertinent. There was one comment on the chat, was your thoughts on sustainable aviation fuel. Today, of course, it comes at an 8 to 10x premium on regular aviation fuel. Do you see that changing in the short to medium term, given the fact that there is such a inordinate amount of demand for aviation fuel across the world?
Yes, it will change. See, remember, in the sustainability business, I always say it's a journey. 17 years ago, when I started my resort, the cost of the photovoltaic panels and the cost of it just 17 years later, it is a huge difference. Technology is evolving so rapidly. The amount of R&D that is happening in the space of sustainability is amazing. Already the first helicopters and passenger aircrafts using just batteries to power it and solar. Concept testing has already been done. Flight testing has been done in such a short span of time. We couldn't imagine this less than 10 years ago, but it's already happened, right? So when it comes to aviation fuel, India is already, for example, experimenting with adding biofuel to it. Aircraft manufacturers today, those aircrafts consume much less fuel compared to what they used to consume 10 years ago.
Right.
So there is a lot of change happening, and everybody is beginning to realize, especially the airline industry, that there is this huge amount of greenhouse gas emissions that they need to sort of stop. So everybody has realized this. There is work in progress. Some industries, like the airline industry, will take a little longer than the others, but everybody is on the pathway towards it. And that's the important thing to sort of know.
Got it. How big an issue is greenwashing in your opinion? I mean, it seems to be talked about a lot, or to greater or lesser extent, depending on where, in which domain you're speaking. How real is it for you?
It is a very, very real issue. Now, there are a couple of things as far as greenwashing is concerned. One, where there is this deliberate greenwashing done, saying, let's just do a little bit of stuff here and there, and, we can talk about it. Typically, hotel, they put a little card in the bedroom saying, please use your towels twice, please put this card on your bed so that the sheet is not changed if you're staying here for not more than 3 days. They change the bulbs to LED bulbs, and suddenly they are an eco resort, as they call themselves. And they tom that, saying, we are in the sustainability space.
Correct.
And then you have the other class of hotels which use engineering solutions for energy saving. And frankly, a lot of these engineering solutions always existed as a part of the continuous improvement on saving energy as a cost factor rather than saving, carbon emissions. That has been happening, as on an ongoing basis, which is something that the engineering industry does anyway. Now, there are a lot of hotels which take some of these and exploit them in a disproportionate manner. That is greenwashing. And then there are the others who and I'm not saying that the people who do the engineering sort of, differences and all are, doing it in a manner which is false. I'm sure it is part of their, overall process. But exploiting it in a manner without doing everything else, is the challenge. And today we also have, a lot of them who do 2, 3, 4, 5 things, in a hotel or a resort or a tour operation, and they declare that to be, all encompassing. So in today's day and age, I tell the industry, sustainability has become affordable, and it is not that everybody needs to jump in and put solar panels on windmills tomorrow. No, there is so much to do even before that. Just looking at all aspects of sustainability. So I tell the industry, just start to follow the criteria that we put out there. It's all free of charge. It's accessible by anybody whenever they want. It's there, available in multiple languages. So it's all there. Just start to access the standards and start to follow the standards. We are not even saying everybody should get themselves certified. No, that also comes much later if you want to get yourself certified. So that is not even the discussion. The discussion is just to start following the standards which are available free of charge. Then the issue, when people start to realize that, okay, there are 33 criteria we should follow. It's not just 2 criteria which relates to, waste management or communicating to guests that they should use their towels twice. That is just, 2 of probably 30 or 40 things that one needs to do. So when people start to do this, then I believe the whole idea of greenwashing will stop. And I also believe, I'm going to give the benefit of doubt to the industry and say that lots of the greenwashing also happens because of ignorance. And it's a fact that people don't realize that there are cultural and socioeconomic aspects of sustainability in tourism that the industry is not even aware of. I'll just give you one very sad example, the underbelly of tourism, which has to do with human trafficking, human sexual exploitation of minorities, of children, of women. It happens a lot and people are just not aware of it. It happens literally in destinations under their nose, amongst the staff, in the industry. And when I ask a few people, do you have a stated written policy in vernacular against all this? They've looked at me and they've said, hang on, man, I'm running a hotel. What are you talking about? So this is what we mean by saying, there are so much to sustainability as defined by the United Nations. So lots of it is not followed, and greenwashing happens only because people are not aware of it.
I understand. So coming to the markets which are probably challenged by complexity or lack of maturity, particularly around sustainability, emerging markets like maybe India, or there must be so many markets across the world outside of Western Europe, which seems to be taking the lead today. What are some of the low-hanging opportunities that they could act on to accelerate their movement towards net zero, being sustainable, and so on and so forth? What could they really do in the maybe short to medium term to really start progressing or accelerating towards this goal?
Yeah, so the first thing we tell people is consciously make a commitment first that
Mm,
you want to be more sustainable in your operations.
mm,
Because that commitment itself is a huge challenge. Because,
mm,
the commitment is a commitment, and none of these commitments are legally binding or anything. Yeah. But just commit to yourself and your business that you want to be sustainable. I always say that is the lowest hanging fruit. That's only intent.
mm,
Once you do that, declare it to the world,
mm,
declare your commitment to the world, and just start following the sustainable tourism criteria as we've described it.
mm,
Appoint a person, appoint a team of people. It doesn't have to be exclusive person doing only this. Make it a multi-departmental sort of objective for you all to reach.
mm,
Again, all non-binding, non-legal, zero commitment as far as financials are concerned.
mm,
Make a commitment, just start looking through the criteria and ask yourself, what all can I follow easily? And
mm,
put that in place,
mm.
record it, publish it. There starts your journey, and that's the easiest thing to do.
How many
We are
people
not
are?
saying allocate, $1 million, in terms of capex budget for the next 4 years, 3 years. No, we're not even talking about any of that.
Mm,
Just when you make the commitment and start to follow the criteria that is available free of charge, itself will be a first step forward. And then if they want more help than that, there is so much of help available around the world. We at GSTC ourselves, offer a lot of handholding and help to people, but there are enough other people, around the world who will offer you help.
mm.
So the lowest hanging fruit is to first make the commitment
Got
and
it.
start to just follow the standard. That's all.
Got it. Understood.
And that itself will be a great step forward.
So in your activity as being involved with GSTC and also your overall consulting, what are some of the examples of innovations and technologies that really excite your interest and could really be game changers in the short term or medium term? Any examples that you've come across, anything that really appeals to you straight out?
Yeah. So a lot of the technology is centered around energy saving
Mm,
of, at least the prominent sort of, technology aspects of it is
mhm,
centered around that. But I'll come to that a little later. But before that, there is this entire sort of buzz in the market saying that, if an entity can become more sustainable, then the amount of carbon that they are able to save, they can buy carbon credits for that. So
mhm.
the more sustainable you become, there is a chance for you to earn money also as an entity on an ongoing basis. So that I thought was an absolutely brilliant idea, which acts as an incentive for hotels, to hotels, tour operators, destinations to move into sustainability.
Mhm.
Where if during that journey they can also earn carbon credits
Mm.
and earn money for it, fantastic. And I thought that innovation in the market will become a complete game changer. That's my personal opinion.
So carbon credits as a way of monetizing the sustainability roadmap.
Exactly, exactly,
Got it.
exactly. And that is not unimaginable as conceptually. I know that there are people in India who are working towards it. And in fact, one or two of them, I'm sort of working with them also on this. That can be a complete game changer, because right now people are looking for incentives to get on the sustainability sort of pathway. And for example, the government of Gujarat has declared that if you get yourself certified with the GSTC criteria, 50% of your certification costs will be reimbursed to you.
Mm.
So that's one level of monetization, shall we say.
Mm.
But really a subsidy on the certification cost, because certification is something which is a barrier for a lot of people.
Mm.
But what I'm talking about in terms of carbon credits is not even to do with certification. Of course, eventually when proof is asked, people will have to show some amount of audited, difference. So that is a big innovation, I think, which will go a long way to incentivize people. When it comes to just the space of, energy saving and, much better technology when it comes to heat pumps, better technology in terms of photovoltaic cells, that is something which is a moving goalpost. There's so much of work being done globally. It's astounding.
Mhm.
But there is one particular innovation in India that I saw. In fact, I even forget the name of the company now. It has to do with the biogas, system. It was a youngster who developed an entire biogas system, a compact, occupies only 10 square feet footprint kind of a system, which actually generates biogas from waste food and scrubs it of all the trace gases, stores it in a safe manner on the site, pressurized storing. And that's an innovation that has come out of India. I
Mhm.
say this is noteworthy because Germany used to do cutting edge work when it came to biogas systems.
Mhm.
And for me to see something like coming out of India, out of Bangalore, I thought was fantastic. And it's more important, it's just testimony to the fact that there are a lot of youngsters waking up, to this whole innovation that is needed in the space of sustainability.
Got it. So final question, Ram, looking at the travel and meeting space, what do you think the key stakeholders can do further? What should be their immediate goal or agenda to really target? I think you've answered part of it earlier, but just specifically to this industry and this domain, since most of our audience members are from this industry.
Yeah. So we are actually, as we speak, developing standards for MICE.
Mhm.
In fact, we've already put out the standards out there. Stakeholder consultations are happening, and at every conference of ours, even in Spain and Korea, before that, we had consultations on improving the standards for MICE that we're developing as we speak.
Mhm.
So that should be out, at its appropriate time. But importantly, as far as the MICE industry is concerned, the thing to keep in mind is this. In general, when people travel, leave alone MICE, if it's leisure or whatever, business travel, in general, when they travel, there is this habit of, I am not at home, so I don't need to behave the way I behave at home.
Mm. Mhm.
So when you step into a hotel, hotels have this mistaken notion that they need to provide luxury, and they define luxury as,
Waste.
Persian carpets, Italian marble, champagne, caviar,
Mm.
not realizing that those are all markers of luxury from yesteryears. I
Mm.
have hoteliers who tell me, oh, we've just refurbished the hotel room and now I have a 50-inch LED TV, a smart TV. And I remember telling him, there are people who have home theaters in their house. Don't try to compete with that.
Mm.
Today, luxury is something else. Luxury is experiences I don't get at home. That is what luxury is, for the leisure traveler. But importantly, when a traveler steps into a bathroom for a shower, there is this rain shower and there is hot water available 24/7, almost instantly, thanks to the technology which you don't have at home. You have to wait for the geyser to, excavate the cold water before your hot water comes on. So in a hotel, we tend to stand under the shower, and that's when everybody becomes the best singer in the world. They walk into the buffet, and the buffet plates are huge compared to the plates at home, which are much smaller.
Mm.
At home, you don't have like a 50-dish, buffet in front of us. At home, you have 4 dishes, on the table. So we tend to indulge, conspicuous consumption, as I call it.
Mm.
So, and typically, I just did a training program in Philippines, and I walked into the room, and it was, at a very prominent 5-star sort of chain. And I remember they had the standard, notepads, pencils, some amount of, what do you call them? Those candies.
Mm.
And I told them, remove everything. I don't think anybody needs a pencil. I think everybody brings their own pen. If they don't have it, we'll give it to them, no problem.
Mm.
I think everybody brings their own books to write. If they don't have it, no problem, we'll give it to them. And I don't think anybody needs candy to chew on when they're listening to a training conference, because the amount of waste that kind of produces. You know what I mean? See, it is just a mindset of, I should have plastic bottles, with water. Otherwise, it's not a good standard. The standards are dependent on aspects of what we call luxury, which are outdated today.
Mm.
Water stations with glasses on the table work very, very well. I don't think anybody in a conference will say, what kind of a conference is this? I don't have a plastic bottle on my table.
Mm.
I don't think human beings react that way, especially, well-meaning executives. So the meetings and, business travel industry, I sort of urge them that just think more, as you approach your own events, as you approach, a hotel stay or a business meeting or anything, to say that, do we really need this?
Mm.
And start that journey. So this particular hotel, the head of banquets, he came running to me saying, no, this is our standard. How can you change that? And I sort of incentivized him, telling him, hey, listen, in this particular meeting, you're going to be saving probably about $100. Imagine when you have 1,000 meetings across your place here, each of your conference rooms, how much you'll be saving. Take this as an initiative. Why don't you take it to your management and say, hey, I saved $100. Don't tell them that, we initiated it. Say you initiated it. We kind of motivated him, and he said, my God, actually, it makes sense. And that is the point. People get it. So I would urge the business travel, industry to give it a little more thought, because the business travel industry is more thoughtful compared to the leisure industry, where it is you throw your hair down and you do whatever you want because you earned yourself a holiday, right? Misbehavior is kind of, becomes the norm. But the business travel industry is not that. They're all thinking people. So for me, one of the incentives, Gaurav, quite honestly, when this invitation came through, is for me to get a chance to address the business travel industry, to say that you all have a fantastic opportunity, because business travel is a lot more thoughtful travel, and there is a chance that you all can make a big difference.
Thank you very much, Ram. So with this, I'd like to open the floor to audience questions, if I may. We've got another about 12 to 15 minutes left on this call. There have been a few messages that have come to me directly, so I'll just pause for a minute in case anyone wants to voice a question directly right now. And otherwise, then I'll come to some of the questions that are already with me on the chat handle directly. So
Sure.
So one of the questions that has come, and I'm still waiting for audience members to unmute if they want and raise their hand, or just simply put a question right up front. I think that'll be a good way to get some discussion going. We do have I think I have a new message here which says that, so Genevieve was asking who is leading sustainability innovations? Is it government or is it corporate organizations who are more adept at leading innovations in sustainability, in your opinion?
See, the role that governments have to play has to do with policy making. The only other sort of innovations that governments can do will always come back and relate to policy. Rules, regulations, policies, call it what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Innovations have to come from the corporate sector, from the private sector. I always say energy for innovation rests with the private sector. It's only the private sector who has the energy for innovation, because we have a profit motive which will result in our innovations, which is a good motive as far as I'm concerned. So expecting governments to innovate is a bit of a challenge, because governments are busy with governance and policy making. And I do a lot of programs for governments across the world. And I always tell governments, your big job is to put together sensible policy in consultation with the private sector. Put together the policy, put together mechanisms for the policies to be followed, put together systems to, if you have the money, to incentivize the following of the policies. And then Leave it to the private sector.
Mm.
Don't come and tell us in the private sector how we should run our business, because nobody knows it better than we do. So for me, innovation has to come from the private sector. And government should be just allowed to do their job in governance and sound policy making, because that itself is a challenge. I mean, trust me, I've been working with governments both in India and outside for close to 2 decades now. It's a big challenge, for governments, because people change, bureaucracy changes, the ministers change, governments change. It's a huge challenge for all of us, who live in systems where we depend on policies that need to be consistent. So leave governments out of it. Let us put on our own thinking caps, I would suggest.
In your recent work across the world, what are some examples of best practices that you may have seen? Something that stands out either in terms of a government's approach or in terms of an individual corporation. Is there something that you would like to place to this audience here?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the loads of examples come to my mind, because usually in most of our global conferences, I'm the one who's chairing the destination part of the panels. So I have loads of examples, that come to my mind. But let me just take out, say, one or two of them. Turkey is a big example. Honestly, nobody expected Turkey, which is not a democratic sort of, Western style democracy government, to actually be concerned about sustainability. Nobody expects them, because Turkey is under fire for a lot of other issues when it comes to social issues, cultural issues, and governance issues. And for them to commit to sustainability honestly came as a shock to everybody, saying, "Whoa, where did this come from?" So that's a big one that is sort of happening as far as the world is concerned. And they are truly, honestly, they've set the trend now. So no Western democracy can talk about Turkey frivolously anymore because of the commitment that they made to sustainability. Very few. We've not heard of any Western democracy that has made a commitment like the way Turkey has made. So that's a big one as far as everybody is concerned. But going on to other examples, Sentosa Island, for example, I think everybody is familiar with Sentosa Island in Singapore. Sentosa Island is another beacon of sustainability, because as a destination, Sentosa Island has been certified. And every single hotel in Sentosa Island has been certified according to the GSTC criteria. So that's a phenomenal example, if you may say, of people who have committed to this. And for me, good examples are people who made commitments, for starters, and people who follow through on the commitments. For me, that is what is more important than anything else. Because we want everybody to commit to sustainability and sort of, be more sustainable. And a few of these examples come to mind, Gaurav.
So wonderful, Ram. I think I've got a couple of more questions on the chat. So, okay, well, I think that was more with somebody leaving the call a couple of minutes early. I'm sorry for that. So I think that's about it for today. I think it was.
So let me just comment, Gaurav, with your permission. What Genevieve has just said. She lives in Turkey, and residential waste is still one garbage bin, no color-coded bins. To hear Turkey even commit to sustainability for the tourism is a massive step change. You are so right. You are so right. And honestly, that is what surprised us. It all started off with and here's the story of Turkey. It started off with a couple of individuals from a university in Turkey, in Antalya, who sort of told themselves, it is a hotel management sort of university, who told themselves, why can't hotels become more sustainable? And they actually did the research themselves. They literally Google searched, found GSTC, approached us. All this is some 2-3 years ago, and the rest is history. That is all it took. Just a couple of committed individuals, and you have an entire country which is transformed. And that's all it takes, because this is not rocket science. This is not brain surgery. It's simple enough to do. And once people get into it, they'll realize that, hang on, this is not so complicated. So I hope more and more people will do that from an innovation perspective.
So I have a question here from Bindu, and that relates to her role as a travel manager who wants to see organizations, partners exercise or be more responsible sustainably. how does she push for these organizations to offer her sustainable choices or make more educated decisions on sustainable options? I mean, that's her dilemma or problem statement as a travel manager who's contending with a wide diversity of suppliers.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, Bindu. And I'm glad you asked the question. I was hoping somebody will ask this question in a business sort of meet. And thank you for asking the question. So here's what you can do. If you're a travel manager and you're taking people on trips or people are coming to your place on trips, either way, for a business meeting or whatever else. If you're having a business meeting in a particular hotel and if you're organizing it, you just have to work with the hotel, irrespective of if the hotel is sustainability minded or not. Go in with the assumption that they are not. And if they are, it's pleasant, it's nice. Go in with zero expectation and tell yourself you got to do everything. And it's not a lot of work. It's literally like what I did for my training conference. I walked into the sort of hall well in advance and I looked around and I said, no, this has to change, this has to change. And in about half an hour, I changed everything. When it came to the food, I told them, I want to see the buffet well before you sort of serve it. And typically in the Asia Pacific region, the tea time snacks are like a buffet in India. Lunchtime snacks are buffet. So I kind of, gently told them, I don't think we need so much of food. Of course, I put it in a more palatable manner. I said, hey, I don't want people to go to sleep after I talk in the afternoon. So I chopped off, 30% of the dishes. And I told them, let's try it the first day. Let's see if anybody will notice. If somebody comes and complains to you saying, whoa, hang on, there's not enough food. What the hell happened? Then we will go back and include all the dishes. So these are small things, Bindu, you can do. The areas to focus on is irresponsible consumption or unnecessary consumption. Like I said, unnecessary consumables on the table for the meeting part of it. These tags that are done for people, honestly, it's just thrown in the bin. Just get stickers, write everybody's name. Everybody just sticks the stickers on. And you solve the issue of, do I know everybody's names or not? So depending on who the people are, you just have to do everything yourself, Bindu. And once you do it 2 times, 3 times, you'll also realize that, oh, hang on, this is not difficult. And importantly, when you, at the end of the conference, tell the people who've gone through the conference, hey, this is me, Bindu. These are the things that I did. And do some kind of a metrics. And tell them, thank you for participating in this experiment that I'm doing. Trust me, they're going to call you back to do the rest of their conferences. Because sustainability makes business sense. And nobody sets out in the morning saying, I want to be unsustainable today. Let me trash the planet. No, people will gravitate towards it because it is human nature, I believe.
So I think that's it with the questions. I've been getting some amount of feedback on the chat that we managed to keep everyone entertained for the last 1 hour. I come to my closing slide, which is essentially a request that in case somebody is on the lookout for consulting and advisory solutions, please do get in touch with ProConsul. We'll be happy to work with you on business travel, on sustainability, market representations, or events. With that, I'd like to thank Ram for his time today. I'd like to thank our audience members for taking out the time on a Friday and joining us for this inaugural session. I hope you found the session worthwhile. The session is being recorded and the recordings will be shared with a short summary of the various aspects that Ram spoke about. And we'd look forward to you socializing this on your respective networks so we can get greater momentum as we go along. Finally, I wanted to also announce our next session, which will take place on the 22nd of March, with our speaker being Johnny Torson. For those of you in the business travel or even the travel industry, he's a fairly well-known person. He's a serial investor and innovator, and he's been involved with multiple startups. He's also engaged with one of the most high-profile startups in the world called Spot Nana, and he's Copenhagen's Goodwill Ambassador. So with this, I'd like to thank all of you for your time today, and I look forward to you joining us as we go along this series and taking it forward in the future. Thank you so much, and thank you, Ram, once again for your time.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you so much for organizing it. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gaurav.